Emily Harrell, a P3 student, and Miss Mary Catherine Bailey, who is just recently retired pharmacist. So thank you both so much for being with us. And Mary Catherine, if you don't mind, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and where you went to school and kind of what your pharmacy background is.
Home originally was in Central Arkansas, and I have a cousin who is 2 years older who was in pharmacy school. I had a chemistry and biology teacher who was an Ole Miss graduate. I felt like my parents really wanted me to stay in Arkansas. And the pharmacy day that year, my senior year in high school, we had one of the largest snows that had ever hit Mississippi. It was beautiful. I fell in love with the place and nobody was there. Everything was closed. So my dad took me over knowing that my heart was set. And I felt very privileged to get to go. And in my class back then, there were very few women. So there were 3 girls who started freshman year at Ole Miss and graduated the same time we did. We also started a great number of people our freshman year, but the war in Vietnam was going on. So it was tough. I'll tell you right now, it was really tough. And my grades weren't in college what they were in high school. But my parents finally gave in, because the deal was if I changed my major from pharmacy, I could come back to one of those Arkansas schools. And I worked really hard to stay in and felt privileged. So started our 3rd year. We had 120 something in our class. We graduated 54. And once again, I felt very privileged and lucky to get to do that. And I've also had a pretty well-rounded career, considering I have a RPH. I said it was not available. It was if you had applied for graduate school, such as you could decide to work on a PhD or go to take a PharmD somewhere other than Ole Miss that was not offered there. But by then, my freshman year, I had met this wonderful boy, and we're still married. But the rule was we had to be finished with college before we married. So we managed to do all that and have a family, and life has really been good.
Now, is he a pharmacist too?
He is a dentist, and
He's
he
a
retired.
dentist.
He retired January of 2019.
So who were your biggest influencers growing up? I know you mentioned your cousin was in pharmacy school. Did you have any other pharmacists in the family?
Not at that time. We have since then. Her father fought in World War II. He had worked in a drugstore, and back then the laws were so lax that he was filling prescriptions and compounding and doing all these things even before he went to war. But he didn't have a college degree of any kind. So when he came home, he thought he could just go back behind the counter again, and the laws had changed. So with a lot of whining and dining, that group of men that age had a grandfather clause so that they could do that. But the rule was they had to have a licensed pharmacist in the store so many hours a week. Now, I don't know what happened to the other hours a week if the pharmacist wasn't there, but that was the rule. And so he enjoyed his drugstore, and he loved it, and I loved going there. And then his daughter chose to go to pharmacy school, and my parents thought that might be a pretty good idea, especially since my first idea for a major was art. And my parents growing up in the Depression said that's not going to fly.
All right, so kind of moving past, after you finished pharmacy school, and what was your first job as a pharmacist?
He was in school still at UT. They didn't have a dental school in Jackson at the time. So part of what I wanted to do was do my last rotation. That's when we started doing hospital and retail rotations in Memphis. And I had a place in South Haven already so I could be married at Christmas and live up there. Well, that program was dropped and ended up that the first few months of marriage I lived in Oxford. But it worked out well. Then I had to get a job in Memphis. And with the school there in the city, it was a little difficult. I think I was the first woman Super D hired. And it was an experience. It was nothing like I'd ever been in before. I'd never even been into a chain store before. And it was interesting. So I met all types of people. We had a senior citizen day. I swore I'd never wanted to be a senior citizen. So here I am. But I worked there 4 months, and they had promised me that when I became licensed, I would get a full salary. But then they changed their mind. So we had a great, well, I guess he held the same position you have. Do you remember Kirby Ladner?
I do not.
Okay, he was kind of the liaison between students and faculty and had a faculty position.
Okay.
Passed away a couple of years ago, and he was great to all of us. So I called him. He said, I don't have much pull in Memphis, but I'll see what I can do. And then I had a phone call from Methodist Central, and I'd always wanted to practice in a hospital. And I said, well, my day off is tomorrow. Can I come tomorrow? She said, well, I'm flying out of here in 2 hours. If you want this job, come now. And I did. I just put down my things and went over to the hospital and worked there until he graduated.
Awesome.
And then we finally decided where we were going to live. It was a choice between his home and my home, so it's Clarksdale, Mississippi. We could still go to the football games, etc.
Oh, of course. You got to still come to the football game.
Except pharmacists work on Saturdays, you know.
That's true. Pharmacists don't get a day off. So can you talk a little bit about, the gender disparities? You talked a little bit about that, but the gender disparities that you faced and how you overcame those throughout your career. And a lot of women are now pharmacists. And so kind of talk about what that looks like for women now and why it's a great job for women.
It is a great job for women. And without sounding like I'm playing the sad fiddle, I did run across some things, but it wasn't in school. It wasn't at Ole Miss. I never even realized I was different from anybody else, even though our whole class probably had 10 to 12 women. Like I said, there were the 3 of us that started together. And we used to stay in touch. In fact, with one, I still do. She was in my wedding. But we never got, the only thing I can ever say is Dr. Maynard Quimby, father of modern pharmacognosy, tough as nails, decided on a beautiful day like today that we would just take a botany tour and go out through the woods where the baseball field is now. And he said, let's pick some posies for the co-eds. And that's the only time I felt separated from anything. And that's nothing bad. That was a really sweet thing for him to do. So that's the only time I felt different with the school ever saying anything. After I moved to Clarksdale, I was working for a small chain out of Baton Rouge and later bought the store. But there was one woman that absolutely couldn't stand the fact that I was here. Her husband had passed away, but he had been a pharmacist in town. And she kept saying something to the effect that women shouldn't be pharmacists. And I finally got the nerve to ask her why. She just said, because it's not a place for a woman. And that's why instead of her saying, well, you have other obligations in your life and you shouldn't. It's just, so I never had much other problem the rest of my life. I've been very fortunate with that.
Can you tell us kind of what your favorite part about the pharmacy profession is, and what it's like to be a wife and a mom for a pharmacist?
Well, actually, that's 2 separate things. The reward in it for me is I've had several rewards that I'll cherish with me the rest of my life. One is a man who was actually one of the garbage men in town. And after I sold my store, they went to another store and had a prescription filled, and the mistake was made. And he told me later, he said, when you had that store, I never worried about it. I just came in, put it up on the shelf, and took it like it said. The fact that they trusted me so much was scary, but it was so flattering and made me feel wonderful. And the fact that those people would come in, even if they didn't have a prescription filled, just to say hi. In my little store. Likewise, in hospital setting, say you start someone on a TPN, and I'm sure 3P would probably know what that is. when you see them get to the point where they can eat food again and they've become nourished and feel better, you feel like you've done something, that you've helped somebody. You may not have seen them face to face but once, but it's rewarding. It's fun. And dosing antibiotics, that's really fun to me. You feel like you protected their kidneys and you've helped them get well or selected the right antibiotic. And that's where the clinical work comes in. And I've been very fortunate there too, because working in a hospital, I was able to, in the state of Mississippi, I can do anything a PharmD can do legally. Now, education-wise, they know a lot I don't know. Likewise, I learned things they didn't learn that probably aren't used so much now. But I just, in all cases, you can find wonderful, rewarding times.
So I know you said that you recently retired, but what area of pharmacy did you practice in before you retired, and what did your normal day-to-day life look like?
Most recently, I worked at the hospital, a medium-sized hospital. It's the Bolivar Medical Center in Cleveland, Mississippi. And my normal day, because I was traveling, was leave here about 7 and get there in time to open the pharmacy at 8, bring up all the machinery, etc. I would like to tell you that I really did clinical all day and I just helped people and I did calculations, and 80% of the day I was working with a computer and a telephone and a dumbwaiter and solving problems and making sure things were ordered. There's a lot of little other things that pharmacists do that are not quite so glamorous. The day would begin with catching up from the night before. They had a remote pharmacist, I guess, near Brentwood, because that was the home office. And everything they did, you made sure was ready to continue if it were right, and you checked everything that morning. And then you had all the new orders coming in because the doctors were just about to leave the hospital then from their first rounds. And whatever need to be corrected right then before the day started. So that was a busy time. And then it was a long day because we didn't close the pharmacy till 7 at night. And then I drove home and was here by 8. Before that, I have worked, like I worked at the hospital in Oxford. We had shorter days, more of them. So they were just different. The Oxford Hospital is larger than the Cleveland Hospital. Methodist was even larger than that. Quitman County was the smallest thing. It was a closet. And I've enjoyed all of them. They all had something that you could say was good and something that you could say was bad. But I'm really happy I got to do all those things. I worked relief all throughout the Delta, between jobs and between my mother being sick and my children having activities. And I got to know a lot of people. And
so could you tell us kind of what a relief pharmacist does?
Well, if someone's sick or if someone has an accident, or maybe they want to go to the pharmacy convention, or maybe they call you up as soon as possible and say, can you work for me these days? And you go into, it's like working in someone's kitchen. Everything's different. You are so dependent on the ladies that work there to tell you where everything is. But you get through the day, you go, whew, did it. And then the next day is not so hard. The next day is not so hard. It's just like working in someone else's kitchen.
So did you, I know that, we were talking about what it's like to balance a home and a life with a career. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, that's another area I think I'm very fortunate. My husband started a solo practice all by himself in the beginning. When you go through dental school, they don't teach you the business end of it. So he had to do all that by himself. And we ended up building an office not far from the house. And he was, I guess, Lord knew who to put me with. He was very hands-on with rearing our children. He would get up in the morning and make their breakfast. He would pack their lunches. He helped me. He would pick them up sometimes when I couldn't pick them up. When I worked at Fred's, I took my lunch break at 3 or 3:30 so I could pick up my children. We just worked around what we had. Our children were able to participate in many things: ball games, baseball, training, horseback riding, cheerleading, tumbling in Memphis, baseball pitching in Jacksonville, Arkansas. We did everything, but you just have to shovel it around and work together. And it was never any of this, well, you did this, so I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do this. We just, and that's why you were talking about pharmacy, and you pull where you need to pull in the store or the situation where you're working. It's true in your home. You just do the same things, do what needs to be done. If you see it needs to be done, just do it.
So thank you so much. And just to wrap up, this is kind of how I've wanted to wrap up all of our last questions for the Summer Speaker Series is, what advice would you give to a high school student or a college student that's considering pharmacy? Why should they choose pharmacy over another career path? And why, what is your favorite part that it does have to offer?
I chose to go to pharmacy school at Ole Miss because it was rated so high. It was number 3 in the country, and I think it's very close to that, if not there now. So if you select this major at this university, you're going to one of the top in the nation. The profession itself lends itself to small town work, big city work, part-time work, and it's respectable. And I'll say this about every pharmacist, everyone I've met, I can count on my hand the number of people that I'm not absolutely proud to be a part of their circle. Consider every aspect of their lives and what they enjoy. My husband has a little thing he says, what do you think Jim Henson's parents said when he said, I'm going to move to New York and make puppets? But he was successful. So you have to decide what you really like. If you really like sciences, and if you really like mathematics, and if you really like, and it's not necessarily dealing with people, because you could be closed up in a research facility, or you could be in even the hospital, you don't see that many people. But it's studying something you really like and then deciding to do it. Don't look back, keep those blinders on, and don't let anything stand in your way.
What good advice. So that's what I need to hear sometimes, is keep your eyes on the prize. So thank you so much, Mary Catherine, and thank you all for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and in the comments below, tell us what you want to see next, and we will see you all super soon.